Good morning and welcome to another episode of Back to the Past with me. I'm Blair. Today we are going to be spending some time actually getting started doing some grading for the footings, and then hopefully in the next day or two start some form work, and hopefully within 2 or 3 days be pouring some footings here. So it'd be nice to see some concrete in the ground. I love having something to actually measure from, and that concrete, that first pour in the ground, is always a really nice thing. We'll be in time lapse pretty much most of this time because the progress is extremely slow and pretty boring. So let's time lapse, and if there's anything good to be said, why, I'll let you know. Here we go. Well, I think I've got the back and all of the intermediate footings all graded and ready for forms. The front needs a little bit of fill before I can do anything on that side, and that's not going to happen here probably this week, maybe not even on this trip. I maybe start to do some form work here in a couple of days. A couple of things I have to do is run a couple of utility lines. I am going to put up a tower off to the southwest that will be both for a wind generator and a couple of solar panels. So I'm going to need to run some conduit. I want everything to be underground to that. So I'm going to run some conduit underground there. I'll take care of that the next time that I've fired this thing up. And then, I've got a drain line directly behind me here. The slope, every time it would rain, would get so doggone muddy you couldn't walk in it. So I put in some drain lines. My dog's helping me. I put in some drain lines down the hill, and it helped a lot. When it rains, the pipe flows water and into the little pond down the hill. And I'm going to tie that into what will be the foundation drain here, and then also the roof drains from this, so that all of it will go downhill and I don't make a muddy mess of things. It has been cold today. When I started, it was about 12 degrees. It's, I think, 29 right now. We were supposed to have wind chills of down to around 0 or below today. Unfortunately, the wind isn't been more than just a mild breeze, so I've been kind of fortunate in that. But I'm cold. I got an hour or so of light left, but I don't think I'm even going to take advantage of that. I need to go make some coffee and warm up a little bit. So I'm out of here for today, and I'll be back, if not tomorrow, the day after. There have been about 4 days where it has been just really cold here. Yesterday wasn't half bad, and today's actually really pleasant. It's in the mid-50s today. I'm ready to start putting in forms. I got the electrical line that I had talked about put in, and I've got it stubbed up right at this corner. And what'll happen is once I get this stem wall put in and backfilled and the building built, there'll be a stairway that'll come in the garage. It'll come up here and then turn this way, and there'll be a platform here, so there'll be a door on the back side of the building here. But underneath that stair platform, I will have all my solar controls and heating controls and stuff for the building in that little area there. I've laid this line back where Gabby is, and I've put in 40 feet of pipe. I'm going to get another 10 feet because I've got a little bit more ditch dug out, and that will take me past those trees, and then eventually there'll be another 40 or 50 feet to get to the solar and wind tower that I'll be building back there to help supplement power for this place. In just a minute, I'm going to go ahead and bring in some material for building forms and stuff, and then we'll get started with some form work. And once we get started with the form work, we'll take a closer look, but I'll go ahead and bring in some material now to get started. I have started driving my stakes for pouring these footings, and we'll have an 8-inch wall that comes up from a 16-inch wide footing, so ideally we should have about 4 inches on each side of the wall each side of the wall that the footing would be centered up on. So ideally, and with a footing it doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as we have the rebar in the middle of the wall to where it ends up in the wall, okay, I think we're okay. So ideally we want 4 inches, which I've got 3 7/8, so that's close enough. Now we have an 1.5-inch form, and it's easiest to go ahead and set up a string line and drive your stakes in a straight line and have that done, and then all you have to do is set up your forms against it, put a nail or a screw, one in each end, and then set up the laser and set the tops of them to grade, and it should be ready to pour. So with an 1.5-inch thick board for a form, we'd want to be 4 inches plus that 1.5 inches, so 5.5 inches from the corner to the string line. And I've got about 5 3/4 right now, again close enough. These orange pins that I've set up on each end, I've checked them for being square and for distance from the front edge, and they're within 1/4 inch or so. So for layout for a footing, this will be just fine. Once the footings are poured, then we can make things real exact and snap lines for wall lines and make sure our wall lines are absolutely perfect. So I'm going to drive a few more stakes. Also, I don't know that you can see any here, but after we drive that first row of stakes, we can measure across 19 inches to the row that goes on this back side. So 19 inches minus double the thickness of the forms, which is 3 inches, makes for a 16-inch wide footing. Now, if we are careful and drive our stakes directly across one another, we can wrap tie wire or something around the top of them to keep the forms from spreading at the top as the concrete fills the forms and applies some pressure, because they're going to want to try to lean out. I'm going to be pouring this all by hand, and when I say hand, I don't mean I'll be mixing it by hand. I'll use my mixer, but I decided against trying to bring a concrete truck in, and I'd have to destroy too much around here to get a concrete truck all the way in. I suppose I could take the rented backhoe, fill up the bucket, carry it back and pour it, and that would work just fine too, I suppose. But anyway, 1 pallet of concrete will fill roughly, I think I figured 27 feet of forms. One of the rules of engineering is that where you break your pours is at 1/3 of the way between its major supports or its ends. Since we're going 24 feet, that would be 8 feet. So ideally, I'd come back 8 feet there and form the end. I probably won't do that on that end. Where we have a 4-foot high wall, there's a lot of structure in that wall, so I'm not too concerned about breaking those rules. The one spot I am concerned about doing that, though, is on this wall here, because this will really be supporting this wall, and the one directly behind me will be supporting more than anything else on the building. So I don't want to break those rules here, especially since after the footing's poured, the 8-inch wall that goes on top of it's only going to be 8 inches high, so there's not a lot of structure there. And here I'll want to go pretty darn close to that 8 feet. You know, I could go 7 and I'd be just fine. And then the 8-inch stem wall that I put over the top of it, I'll do that continuous all the way to the front of the building. I've got some more stakes to drive here, but I'm going to go ahead and get everything else set in place where it goes, so I know exactly where to put these. I've got the laser set up, it's leveled. Everything is approximately where it should be. I know it's nowhere near right and grade. I've probably got some high spots, but I know that there's going to be some low spots too. So what I'm going to do is the stakes that are nearest the corner, I'll go ahead and shoot grade on those, and then I can, if I need to do a little bit of scraping under the forms, I can do that. And of course, raising things up to that line will be real easy too. So here we go. Now, remembering that the bottom of the footing was essentially the bottom of this concrete footer, and there's a 12-inch diameter one going 3 feet deep below that. But we want the top of the footing, since it's an 8-inch thick footing, we want the top of the footing to be about 4 inches above this. And I'm kind of accustomed to doing everything in hundredths of feet, so that's what I'm going to do. So 33 hundredths would be 4 inches. I went ahead and screwed the forms to the point on my stakes that I had laid out, and then I went around, and once I did that, I double checked everything for grade, and the top of the form now is grade. So the next step is going to be fill the low area here, mostly from about that corner all the way along that edge and a little bit here too. But fortunately, I've got a whole bunch of drain gravel that's kind of blocking my driveway anyway, so I'll bring in probably 2 buckets of that. Should do it, I would think. So I'll do that next, and then we'll get started on rebar and bulkheads. It appears to be a real nice day today, but appearances are a little bit deceiving. It's actually pretty chilly out here. High is supposed to be in the upper 30s, and it's probably in the mid 30s right now. Seemed to take me forever to get everything set up to get ready to do this. I did finish the rebar last night. I cut and bent a bunch of dowels for stubbing up out of the concrete. So that's ready to go. I've got water. I've got the Kubota loaded up with 6 bags, which is about the maximum that mixer will handle at a time, but it should get things done. I'm going to immediately go into time lapse because this is one of those things, you've seen it once, you've seen it as many times as you really need to, but we'll go through the process anyway. You can watch. Well, I've got 2 pours in the ground. That's kind of nice. It's a good feeling to have concrete there. The footings, I've still got probably 3 more pours to do to take care of the footings, and then several, of course, on the stem walls. And starting next week, I'm going to be running back and forth between Colorado and here quite a bit, so I won't be getting a lot done, won't be terribly productive. I've only got this backhoe rented for the rest of today. And I got to return it in the morning, so I'm going to spend the rest of the day hauling in fill dirt, and to keep you from getting bored with it, I'm going to go ahead and time lapse this. For 12 years, I worked for one of the largest industrial concrete companies in the nation before going into business for myself. And I got to say, I absolutely hate doing concrete work, but it's real refreshing once it's in the ground. You have something to measure from, something to build upon, something that you know is going to provide support for the building that you put on top of it. So in that respect, it's pretty comforting. To recap a little bit what I've done is I've done some using pretty crude methods. You know, there could have been a concrete truck brought in here, there could have been a concrete pump truck, but that would have taken a substantial crew to be able to do it, and I like being able to do things alone, just like my dad did for so many years. There may be situations where a person couldn't get a concrete truck in, and you're forced with doing it this way. So hopefully if you're in that situation, you learn something. So I took and found the alignment to the footings, drove stakes that were 5.5 inches, a line of stakes 5.5 inches outside of what will be the outside wall line. And that leaves 1.5 inches for concrete forms and 4 inches for the forms to sit on, and additional support for the walls when I get to doing the walls. Went ahead and poured those, breaking the joints in the concrete at roughly 1/3 of the way from all the corners. And by engineering standards, that's what you should do. When I go to putting in the walls on top of this, I will add some additional reinforcement everywhere that I have a joint in the foundation or in the footings. So there's several of those that's going to have to be taken up, and then the regular reinforcement in the walls in addition to that. I'm probably going to end this episode here. There's no sense really in showing you how to do any more footings. It's all pretty much the same. I will have a 10-foot door right in the middle, a barn door. So this footing I have to bring around the corner about 5 feet. On the far end, I have to continue that one all the way around the corner past that round pier that I've got for 5 feet, and then that'll leave a 10-foot opening for a doorway there. Once I get all the footings in, I'll go ahead and start on this back wall, and part of this will be a 2-foot high wall, part of it will be a 4-foot high wall, depending on what I need to hold back the backfill and not to have to worry about having water running into the building. So I appreciate that you joined me. I really appreciate it if you stuck around to the end. Hopefully you learned something. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.